Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Janome 6700. And in this video, we're going to talk about the accessories that come with your machine. First of all, we have the stitch reference chart here, and it fits right up here in this bracket. So you've got it handy to see what stitches you want. On the other side, we've got the lettering right there, all the numbers so you can type in the numbers to get your stitches that you want. And when you're done sewing, you can put this right back here in the back like that to store your machine. Here we have the cover. Now, when you use the cover, make sure that you turn off your machine, of course, and put this down. Now, I like to have my needle down, so before I turn off my machine, I would press needle down. The reason for that is this is a soft cover, and I want to make sure that my needle's down so that the cover doesn't get caught on the needle. So we're going to put it on. And then if you're going to be carrying or moving your machine, actually it's just a good habit to put it on so that the Janome is in front rather than on the back. The reason for that is this handle, little opening here for the handle, is in such a way that it's not centered because the handle's not centered. So you want to have Janome showing in front so that the handle can go through the hole in the cover correctly. So I'm going to set this to the side right there. I like it that it's lightweight. It can just be folded up. It doesn't take a lot of room to store. Now when we turn on our machine, make sure that you raise your thread tree right away. It gives us a little signal here because I have lowered my needle. So I'm going to roll the hand wheel forward until the take-up lever peaks up there. All right. So next we have the extension table. The extension table is a nice big area. So if you're going to do free motion quilting, you've got a large area. Has the feet here. You notice I've got my knee lifter right here. It can store it right here in the back. I'm going to talk about the knee lifter a little bit. So the extension table goes right on here like this. Take that out of the way. There we go. So it's got a nice large area for doing your free motion quilting. Plus, you've got a lot of throat space here, so you can do a nice large quilt this way. And it's got inch markings and millimeter markings right here in front. Really handy to have that. So for now, I'm going to just put this off to the side. Folds up really easily. Put that right over there. And of course you have the instruction manual. Now, my instruction manual is a little dog-eared on the edges because this is my own personal machine. I've used this machine a lot. And you can see I've got dog-eared pages for quick reference. A lot of notes in this. Made it my own machine, my own book here. Really handy reference guide, by the way. Then we've got our knee lifter. Now the knee lifter goes right into this socket right here. And what that does is it lifts up the presser foot by the push of your knee. Also, if the presser foot's already up, you can just push it to the right and it'll put it down. This is a really nice feature so that way you don't have to be moving this with your hand all the time. You certainly can if you want to, and to get the extra high lift, to keep it up there, you need to use your hand. But your knee lifter will do that work for you. And so you can leave this down most of the time. Done sewing, lift the presser foot with your knee and pull out your project. Also, this has an adjustment right here, and this adjustment screw is so that you can adjust the angle of the knee lifter. That way you don't have it in so far that you're pushing it all the time. When you're sewing, that wouldn't be good because that would raise the foot a little bit. But you also don't want to have it out so far that it hits the side of your cabinet or whatever table that you have it in. You want to have it in a nice, comfortable setting for yourself. So this has a lock washer on it. Once you've got it set, just tighten it down good. It'll be good to go. I like to leave mine on all the time, and you can leave it on and put your cover on with this still on here. Okay. We also have the foot control. Now the foot control is right here. Now I have this extra cutter switch, which is optional, but your foot control is this big area here, and it also has cord storage in the back. This little thing comes off here. You can wind your cord around here and store it that way. I usually leave mine up all the time. This bracket here is part of the thread cutter switch, which is an optional accessory, but I really like this. This means that I can push this with my foot and it cuts my threads. That's instead of using this little button. Now, why would I want to do that? It's because I want to keep my eyes on my sewing. I don't want to have to take my eyes away, look up, push the button. I'd rather just tap that with my foot and cut my threads that way. I use this all the time. It's really great. Also, I've gotten into the habit of sewing with my left foot here, and then my right foot I have for using the knee lifter or using the cutter switch. So that's how I have mine set up at home. Makes it nice and convenient that way. Okay, we also have the box of accessories. And this box has all your accessories in it. You have 2 levels here, and we're going to get into the accessories in a minute here. So now we're going to talk about some of the smaller accessories that come with your machine. This is the A foot. The A foot has A right there, and it comes with your machine. I'm going to show you how this goes on your machine. You put it right here. Make sure you line up the stitch holes right there, lower your presser foot, and it goes right on there. Now this little knob on the back keeps the foot from rocking when you're sewing over something really thick. I'm going to show you how that works. So we've got lots of layers on this denim here. When I'm sewing along, I don't have any thread in there, that's okay. See how it kind of wants to bog down and not get up over that. So what we do is we make sure the needle's down, lift up your presser foot, push down on the toes here on the front, and then push that in. There's a little notch on the back of the foot holder. Now when you lower your presser foot, the foot stays level so that you can keep sewing. It'll go right over that. Once that's not needed anymore, the little button pops out. So really what happens is, as long as there is pressure on the front of the foot, which would be the lump in the fabric there, pressure is going to keep that button in. You don't have to keep it pushed in. And once the pressure is released, it comes right back out. So that comes with your machine. It's going to be on your machine. And you saw how I changed it really easy and quick. Okay, back over here, we have the M foot. Now the M foot is going to be good for sewing the edges of thin fabric like cotton fabric. You want to say do a overcast edge. Overcast would be an application of zigzag where you're keeping it from fraying at the edge. Well, this has some wires there that keep that stitch nice and flat. It gives a little bit of extra slack in the thread to keep the stitch nice and flat on the edge. And it also has this guide here for the edge of your fabric so that you can guide it right along the edge. This is your F foot or fancy stitch foot. The F foot has this groove on the bottom here, and that groove is so if you're doing a satin stitch, that'll just flow right on through. It's got room for it to flow through. It's also good for lettering because the lettering has a little bit of thickness to the stitch. This is your blind hem foot, and in case you're not familiar with what a blind hem is, this is blind hem, and I've got a contrast thread here, but you can see those are little dots of stitches there, and you sew it from the other side. I used the overcasting foot for to seal the raw edge so it doesn't fray, and those are the little stitches. It's a special stitch that I can show you in a different video, but that's how blind hem works, and this is the blind hem foot. This is the zipper foot. I really like this zipper foot because it doesn't have a flange on the side that goes over. You can really sew right next to the zipper teeth, or in the case of putting on piping or welting, you can also sew right next to the edge. Now, you can sew either on this side or on this side. You wouldn't sew in the center. This center hole here is to accommodate if you haven't moved your needle and you accidentally pushed your go button or your needle down button, the needle's not going to hit the foot and break the needle. That's what that hole's there for. It's just a safety feature. In using this foot, you would use your stitch width dial and move your needle over to the right or to the left. This is the buttonhole foot. Now, buttonholes are like this. This is an example of one of the kinds of buttonholes that you can make. And of course, I've used contrasting thread. This buttonhole foot looks really complicated. Excuse me. It really does a lot of work for you. You open this up, put your button right here, zero that down, and it gets a consistent length of buttonhole, just the right length. Also, you've got an adjustment knob up here, which in a future video I can show you how to use that. But just know that this is a great way to make buttonholes easily and quickly on your machine. Now, this stabilizer bar fits right in there like that, and that is for extra thick layers. Say you're making buttonholes on a coat, and you've got the lining and you've got the whatever batting or whatever inside at thickness to make a nice warm coat insulation, and you've got the outer part, and you don't want those layers shifting while you're making a buttonhole, so you can put your coat right between those layers, and that will keep them all together. For most buttonholes, that I don't usually use that. I just, do buttonholes on shirts and things, and you can use it just like this. Next, we have the rolled hem foot. Now, this rolled hem foot is genius in terms of it can make a nice rolled hem. Show you what that looks like here. Rolled hem. Pardon me. And it rolls the fabric for you so that you don't have to pre-press your fabric. It rolls it right into that little curl on the end right there like that. Now, this makes a nice narrow rolled hem, narrower than this one. This one here, I actually used a wider foot in. That would be an extra accessory, but you can see if you look at these two here, this one looks a little bit bigger. It'll make a slightly wider rolled hem, but it's a little bit easier to maneuver the fabric into that curl. So I tend to like to, if I'm going to get an extra foot, this is one of the extra feet that I get. Make sure that when you get these feet, you have a 9mm. This is for 9mm max machines. This machine does a 9mm wide stitch, and the foot holder would only fit this. Make sure you don't get one that says 7 because that wouldn't fit the foot holder. It's got to say 9. Okay, then over here we have the open toe F foot. So here we have the F foot, and here we have the open toe foot. And you can see they're a little different because they have these open toe. They're the same on the back. They both have this channel on the back. The nice thing about this is if you're trying to sew very precisely right down a line, you can see where you're going, and you can see where that needle ends up. So it's really a useful foot that way, like stitch in the ditch or whatever. Okay, this is your button sewing foot, and it has these little blue toes here which grip the button nice and tightly. And of course, this is for sewing the kind of buttons that have holes that go through them. It's not for the shank type of button, which you would have to sew on by hand. This is for sewing buttons that have either 4 holes or 2 holes. And it has an extra bar in the back, and that attaches in the same groove where on the back of the ankle where I was showing you that pin goes on the A foot. That's so that this doesn't rock, because you don't want it rocking when you're sewing on a button. You want to keep it nice and stable. Okay, this is your 1/4-inch piecing foot. It has this little flange on the side that you would run the edge, the raw edge of your fabric right along there, and it would give you a beautiful 1/4-inch seam. Now you notice it also has a little bit extra width here. That is because you need to actually choose the 1/4-inch stitch on your machine or move your needle over in order to get that 1/4-inch seam. If you haven't yet moved it over, again, safety feature, you've got room for that needle to go down through the foot without hitting the foot. But normally you would move the needle over so you get a 1/4 inch. Also, it's got a little extra room on the right-hand side so that you can move the needle over and get a scant 1/4 inch. Really nice, handy. And it has marks on the side here. This mark here shows you right where the needle is. The one ahead of it shows you where you can stop a 1/4 inch from the edge, turn your fabric, and do another 1/4 inch. I mean, you can use this for piecing or just decorative stitching too. So you can stop a 1/4 inch away from the edge. You can also start a 1/4 inch away from the beginning with that mark right there. Really handy to have that. So that's the O foot right there. Then for doing your quilting, this is the quilting foot. It's fairly standard quilting foot. This is the bar that goes over your needle bar. So every time the needle goes up, the foot goes up. Every time the needle goes down, this goes down. So this is the jumping one. Okay, many of you are familiar with this. By the way, this is a high shank foot. You have a high shank machine. I'll show you over here. The distance between the screw and the bottom of the foot is a high distance. On a low shank machine, there's less distance between here and here. So again, when you get accessories that have to be screwed onto here, make sure you get high shank accessories. This one is the floating quilting foot. Now this one has 3 different feet that go with it, and they attach with this little screw right here. I like this one because it's kind of wider and it's clear, but you can also use this one that's an open toe foot, and this one that's a closed toe foot. So it really has to do with your preference as a quilter. Again, this is not the hopping kind. This is the floating kind. This has an adjustment over here on the side to make it so that you can raise this up and make it float a little higher on your thick batting, or lower it down if you have some thin batting. So many of your cotton battings are thinner. You want to have it just barely floating above, easily floating, but not so high that the fabric jumps every time the needle jumps. So you can adjust that right here. Nice tool. Now this one is the dual feed foot. This is a really neat foot to have when you are doing quilting, say you're stitching the ditch quilting or your echo quilting, or even using that neat serpentine stitch, which I use a lot when I'm quilting. This one will keep all of your layers together, your top of your quilt, your backing, and your batting all nice and even. And it walks along using this little hook that hooks into your machine. So this is an active quilting mechanism. So I'm going to do a future video on how to use this and what this is all about, but just know that this is a really useful tool to have, and this comes with your machine. All of these accessories that I'm showing you right now come with your machine. I am going to show you in a couple of minutes some extra accessories that I personally bought that help make my sewing even more efficient and fun. This here is used in combination with your button sewing foot. So if you have a button that you want to have a little bit of room between the button and the fabric, it's like a built-in shank, you would put this underneath the foot, put your button there, and have a space there. So, I mean, when you put it on there, it would create a space between the button and the fabric. This is also a good thing to use for what I was showing you a little bit ago, where you could use that knob. What this does is you can put this behind the foot. Let's show you over here. So say I'm going over some thick seam and I'm coming up to it like that. Well, if I don't want to use this, I could actually put this behind here like that, as long as it's on either side. I'm going to use a thinner end, and you can use either end, thinner or thicker. Get it a little bit higher. There we go. Now what that does is it keeps the foot level, but at the same time, this tool will help press the fabric down on the back feed dogs. So this is especially useful to use this tool when you have a really thick hump that you're going over. Say you're hemming jeans and you've got that side flat fail seam that you're going over through all those thicknesses. It's nice to have this back here. And as soon as you don't need it, it just kind of drops off the back. Okay, so we can call that the hump jumper. It's probably called something else in the book, but that's okay. Now you do get 4 extra bobbins in your machine, in with your accessories, and there's one already in your machine when it comes, so I'm just showing you. If you get more bobbins, and it would be a good idea to get more bobbins, you can get them here at Montevilla, a little package of them. Make sure you get the class 15 bobbins. And if you're not sure what kind of bobbins to get, you can always tell the people up at the counter, this is the machine I have, what kind of bobbins do I need? And they'll make sure you get the correct kind of bobbins. This is your needle set. Now, these different colors here, actually, I really don't know which they are for, because the colors from machine to machine, or different brands of machine, they use different colors meaning different things. I believe that the blue are all-purpose needles, and then the purple and the red have to do with knits or denims, I'm not quite sure. This is the needle right here that I really want to point out. That's your twin needle. Now, in my introduction video, I talked about using a twin needle that's the same. Like if you replace this, make sure that you replace it with this narrow width. Make sure you don't have a wider twin needle, because your machine is calibrated for this width of needle, of twin needle. And that's mostly for decorative stitches. So I'm going to put that right back in there like that. Here we have the seam ripper. And a lot of you guys know what a seam ripper is. It's your friend, right? We sewers sometimes will make mistakes. Sometimes, well, maybe oftentimes, we'll make mistakes. Or if we need to open a buttonhole, once you've sewn your buttonhole, you need to open that buttonhole. This is the tool you use. It's nice and sharp in there. Also, the cap can go right on the end like this, gives you a little bit more grip on it. Plus, when you lay it down, it's not going to roll away because the cap has those little lugs on it, keeps it from rolling away. Once you're done using it, make sure you close it back up for safety purposes. This is your cleaning brush. Doesn't take much explanation, but this is for cleaning your machine. And on our maintenance video, I'll show you about cleaning your machine. Screwdriver, this would be for putting those extra feet on. For instance, this kind of foot here, you're going to need to unscrew the screwdriver, the screw on the side. Also for changing your needle, this is what you'd use. Now this here is a quilting bar. What this does is it can help you make nice, even, parallel lines of stitching. I'll show you over here on this side. Take this guy out of here. This fits right back in here like this. It's a tight fit, which it should be, because that way it's not going to move. So if I was going to make parallel lines of stitching, I'd make my first line of stitching, then take my fabric out, move it over, and I'd line up my first line of stitching right here with the front of this quilting bar, make my second line of stitching. And it could be straight stitching, it could be a serpentine stitch, it could even be a decorative stitch that you could make lines of stitching that be nice and parallel. This saves a lot of time, so you don't have to do a lot of marking. Now this can also be put in your walking foot. There's a place right back here. Put that right in there like that. Now you can quilt your quilt with, say, a serpentine stitch, and have even lines of stitching all down your quilt, all across. Or if you want to do it at a diagonal, it's really, really helpful that way. Okay, so I'm going to take that guy out of there like that. Now, we're going to show you these guys here in the center. And you have a variety of spool caps for different kinds of spools, wider spools, narrow spools, the way these spool caps go on here. I'll show you right over here. Go up on top like that, on top of your spools. Now normally, You really don't even need spool caps because the way the thread flows off with this nice thread tree, you don't really need it most of the time, but there may be spools where you would need your spool caps. Back over here, we got, this would be for your bigger spools. This is for your smaller, narrower spools. And then these are for the kind of spools that don't have a top. So you would just put this on your spool pin and then just put that on top like that. If you need it. Okay, now these are really nice. These little guys here, over here. If you have a spool of thread that has a really wide area here and you put this on here, it's rattling around all over the place. So what we do is put this on here. Put that right in there. See how nice that holds that? So if you get 2 of these and your twin needle, you can do some really nice decorative stitching that way using specialty thread. Okay, we can take that off there for now. Now we're going to talk about the nets. Well, what are these for? Okay. One way to explain the net system is that if you have, say you're a knitter and you have balls of yarn and you don't want that ball of yarn coming undone while you're knitting, well, a knitter will put a net over that ball of yarn. Okay, if you have thread that tends to want to unspool, kind of it's silky and flowy and it's sitting there, just kind of spools off by itself. Well, you don't want that happening, so you take one of your thread nets and put that around the spool. I'll show you. Now this is a fairly short spool, so I'm going to fold that in half, put that like this, and now the thread can just spool right off the top like that, without it falling off the spool. So put that right there. Now these smaller feet, like up in here, can fit in your accessory tray. There's 10 spots. It's slightly more than what you need, so if you get extra feet, you can put them in there. We'll put these off to the side here, because next I'm going to talk about the needle plates. Now you have 3 needle plates. One comes with your machine, and that's the zigzag, has a wide hole. And your machine knows which needle plate you have on there. So this one here, this is your straight stitch needle plate. It has 3 holes right there. And you can use it for sewing things that tend to get pushed down into that nice wide 9mm hole. I used this, in fact, this is my own personal machine. I used this machine to sew a wedding dress for my daughter. Big project, but those slickery fabrics tended to want to get pushed down inside my machine when I was stitching along. So I switched over to this plate. It was wonderful. Not a problem. It fed beautifully because I could use those holes right there. Of course, you can't do zigzag with this, but your machine knows which plate you have on and will not allow you to do a zigzag. And this is how it knows on the back here. It has these little knobs right here. The machine reads that. Now, we have another one. This is your HP plate and the HP foot. It says HP right on the back of the foot there, and HP. HP stands for high performance. This is for sewing where you're just sewing straight. When you put this on, this needle plate, the needle will shift right over there to that hole on the left-hand side. And when you put this on, it will, the needle and the hole will line up just right. Quilters like to use this. Some people like to use this because it'll give you a nice 1/4-inch seam. Also, the markings for seam guides on this plate are shifted over a little bit. In fact, I'll show you even these markings here on the cover, bobbin cover. If you look at them, they're just slightly different. Actually, I'm going to show you right there. All right there. There's just slightly different. There we go. And that way, because your needle shifted over to the left a little bit, you can get a 5/8 inch seam allowance or a 3/8 inch or 1/4 inch, whatever you want to get. So, and this one says HP right there, so you know it goes on the HP plate. Another nice thing about having more than one plate, let's say you accidentally lose this little guy. You flip it off of there and it flips away and you have no idea where it is on your carpet. Well, you can take another one off of your another needle plate, and this one is the same as the one that's on your standard needle plate. So that's your accessories. That's the ones that come with your machine. But I'm going to show you a couple that I've got extra, and you can purchase extra accessories, but that are really useful, that I found very useful to me. I already showed you this one here, which is your wider rolled hem foot. And this is good for like quilting weight fabrics. This still makes a nice narrow hem, but if you're going to do like a ruffled apron that has a lot of ruffles on it, you may want to have this one here because you're using quilting cotton. Now, your machine comes with a screwdriver, but I like to have a bigger screwdriver. This gives me a little more of a handle to hang on to. So bigger screwdriver. And then this one, now remember this one comes with your machine. This is the little hump jumper. Well, I purchased this one. Works the same way, except it has this extra little hole right there. And I use that for putting a needle in. That's a needle inserter. It has a flat side, which is going to keep the flat side of your needle shank towards the back aligned perfectly. It's easier for me to use a tool like this than it is to just hold the needle with my fingers. It's an extra tool. So this one is not a Janome product. You can buy it here at Monteville Sewing Center. It's actually in with the FOF or Viking accessories. So that's a nice extra thing here. Also, remember I talked about doing blind hems. Okay, this is the blind hem foot. Well, I like this blind hem foot. This is a Janome blind hem foot. It's a nice wide 9mm foot. It has, for one thing, nothing in the needle area here. This has an extra little piece of metal, but this is clear and open. This here, you can move this flange, which corresponds. Okay, I'm gonna go like this here. Okay, so this here, we go. You've got a flange at the bottom here, got a flange at the bottom here. This flange, the flange on this one is fixed. This one you can actually move from side to side by using this little wheel up here. So that makes it so that you can get a really precise blind hem, but also it makes it so that if you want to do top stitching, like on the edge of a collar or a cuff or something, you can run the edge of your collar or cuff along there. You can also do pin tucks, a really nice fine even pin tuck using this here. Okay, so that's an extra accessory that I bought. And then this is the walking foot that comes with your machine. This is an extra walking foot that I got that's narrower than this. Okay. Guess which one I used to sew that wedding dress? This one right here. Very precise, very even, is not quite as big as this. So for sewing those delicate fabrics, this is the one I used. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to each of these. So for precise things, you want this. But this one here has the walking foot only in the back, so it's behind the needle. This one has the walking foot so that these two little toes here actually come up parallel to or even a little bit in front of the needle. So if you're starting right at the edge of something, say the edge of your quilt, this is the one that you want to use for that. They can both take the quilting bar. They both have that capability, and they work the same way. Another genius thing about this I'll show you this also in the video, is that these things come off. And so you can take the foot off and put a different foot on. So I got an open toe foot, which I really like for sewing on my quilts because I can see where that line is. And that just slides right on like that. All right. Couple more feet, I'll show you. This one's a decorative foot. You can put cords right in there, do a 3-step zigzag, and you've got what looks like braid on your fabric, but is actually stitched on using decorative cords like you could use pearl crown, rayon, or hand embroidery thread, whatever you want to do, or even decorative metallic threads. This one is the invisible zipper foot. So it's got flanges on the back. There you go, right there, where you put your zipper teeth. Most of the zippers I put in garments now, I do invisible zippers, and this one works really well in conjunction with this zipper foot, because at the end of putting on your zipper, you need to sew the bottom edge, and so these two can work really nicely together, putting in invisible zippers. So that's the accessories for this machine. Thank you for watching. We have other videos. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. We have a comments and questions section down below. You can leave comments and questions down there. We have other videos on this machine, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye.